Hello, everyone. Today is Wednesday, the 16th of August, 2017. It is block height 480,805. And today we're talking about the early history of PayPal, following an article by the former COO, David Sachs, in CNBC today, who says that PayPal was basically trying to build the original vision of cryptocurrency. And so I want to bring Shinobi and a few guys into this, because before we came on air today, we were trying to figure out like the early history of PayPal. We'd kind of heard rumors of, they tried to kind of do this thing, try to create a stateless currency, but then they were prevented by the regulators and they had to become a custodian of those. And actually on Twitter, Janina was tweeting about this, and she observed that, in this article on the 100 most influential libertarians, Peter Thiel's name came up, and he was quoted as, PayPal creating a non-state currency, Facebook developing a non-state community. And then she kind of points out that actually he's also like linked to like a surveillance company as well. PayPal actually did respond to Janine there. She did say, here at PayPal, we transact in regulated state currencies like USD, CAD, Euros, GBP, etc. So they clearly failed in their attempt to become a stateless currency. And instead, you can see in this sort of early picture of Peter Thiel and Elon Musk here, you still got the little Visa logo. And it kind of shows you, how little things changed until Bitcoin came along. Because essentially what PayPal is a centralized database of transactions. Whereas back then, the holy grail, academically speaking, was this decentralized system, right? And so guys, come in on this, because we want to like break out the discussion we were having on earlier.
All right, well, jump in real quick. I mean, I think one of the things that goes to show is like at the heart of what they were trying to do, I think, was bring access to these kinds of financial services to more people, and less so actually trying to change the fundamental nature of what those services are built on. So, I mean, in a way, I could see that as kind of a noble goal, but I don't really think they set out in the beginning to do exactly what Bitcoin did, create a whole currency that is completely non-state run and uncensorable. It was just more they wanted to provide wider access to those conventional state currencies or monetary systems.
Right, but check out this quote here from David Sachs. After PayPal, I never thought I would get interested in payments again, but Bitcoin is fulfilling PayPal's original vision to create a new world currency. Actually, we had T-shirts printed in 1999 with that mission statement. So I think, are they trying to like revise history a little bit? And try to claim like this was our idea, and then bandwagoning off of Bitcoin's success right now?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would consider it that. And to go a little further, this potentially might indicate some internal thought processes about integrating these kinds of systems now that they're getting so big and to the point where most people here are confident there's nothing you can do to shut them down.
Right. And Sachs also goes on to say, it feels like we're witnessing the birth of a new kind of web. Some people have called it the decentralized web or the internet of money. And he goes into these tokens, the cryptocurrencies. He says that he thinks it's still, in a bubble, and eventually it'll have a crash. And he talks about how he basically hopes, the technology is probably 1995 and the pricing is either 1999 or getting close. It's a combination of something real with a lot of speculation. And so he's saying there'll be a correction, and he's saying that the price will come down, and he hopes that it won't be as bad as the dot-com bubble was previously. A softer landing is what Sachs is hoping for. But I don't know. I'm trying to work out. You see, these kinds of articles, when they hit the media, particularly on a quiet news day, particularly in the summer, say this is often called the silly season in journalism, around August time, what will often happen is, these online magazines now will be looking at the engagement metrics that they're getting on their website. And what they'll be doing is the SEO guy or the head of marketing will come in and say, here are the keywords that are trending right now. Here are the memes, the mimetic vectors, as they're known. And we need to do an article with these keywords in it. So now you're not writing an article based on real events happening in the world. You're now writing articles based on what's going to get you traffic to your site, and putting the word cryptocurrency in the title, and putting Bitcoin and PayPal and putting it all together is often the way to get the traffic when there isn't a whole lot of other news to go around. So this article is by Eric Jackson. I don't know. I imagine he put in a call and said, "Hey, David, can you give me a quote here? I'm looking to build an article around this." And then kind of, that's how I feel, in my opinion, this is how this article is constructed.
I mean, yeah, I can totally get that sense from it. I mean, when you really look at it, the only real a thing of substance to the comparison of cryptocurrency and PayPal is really that notion of money as a database, and that's really the only commonality there. The big difference is that PayPal, obviously, as a custodian, would manage and control and have the final say over that database, whereas with cryptocurrencies, it's mostly proof of work, but you have these other mechanisms to widely distribute that database and not leave any single entity in control of it. So there is that, like, one sort of commonality there, but aside from that, like, it's nothing but differences.
Right. And I also linked in the description below, for anyone who wants to check out whether this is revisionist history, an actual timeline of PayPal's development. So you'll be able to go back, and it's on Wikipedia. And from there, I guess you can do your own research to see, you know, how much of this article is really just filler to fill up the space in the CNBC website, or whether it's actually kind of real news. But it's certainly got a lot of traction, surfacing on a lot of the Reddit channels. I got it straight away on my Twitter feed. I think there is some kind of piggybacking going on. So I want to now kind of segue into a follow-up from yesterday's story, where we talked about Blockstream commissioning some satellites, some data feeds, in order to be able to broadcast the blockchain, the Bitcoin blockchain that is, all over the world, in particular targeting areas that have intermittent or non-existent internet access, so that everyone can get it. I've said before that I sort of feel like Bitcoin is, the blockchain is a global dialogue, right? It's somewhere where people, for the first time, we have the whole world is able to speak without permission, right? There is no entry requirements to the Bitcoin blockchain. Anyone can have a say. You need a little bit of money, but as I think many people online have demonstrated, and I have in the past with Thomas Hunt and so forth, you can earn Bitcoin pretty easily just by having basic access to the internet. You can work for it as well as buying it. You can receive donations simply by putting a Bitcoin address on your website. And so it's the permissionless access aspect that I think I'm most interested in. So one of the things that I think, Shinobi, you want to talk about is how are we going to actually, here in the Bitcoin mumble, are we actually going to try and build one of these satellite dishes? And if so, how are we going to do it? Let me just show everyone the link to the article, and then you can talk.
Oh, I am definitely, the second I get my hands on a satellite dish, I'm being a little bit of a cheapskate with that part. Going to be putting one of these together. And I mean, if it really, like, one thing I would like to point out for everybody who wants to put this system together and actually take advantage of this downlink is these parts are cumulatively about $100, but the biggest cost is mostly the interface between the coaxial cable and your actual computer, so that software can take the radio signals and digitize it and actually get packet-based information out of it, and the dish. And at least in America, I don't know in the rest of the world, but back in the early 2000s, late 90s, there was a big initial push for DSL service. And in the interim, a lot of people were getting satellite internet and services before the DSL coverage got to their areas. And a lot of these people just pretty much switched right to DSL after it came to the area. And a lot of these people, they still have dishes in the house. Like, they kept them, or their service provider never came to collect them. So with that specific piece of hardware, I think there is really a lot of room, if you go out and look, like, network with people, to get the most expensive piece for free, or a lot cheaper than you would pay for a new one. But I am definitely intending on putting this together. And I'm obviously a little skeptical about showing my face, but I think we can get some video set up that Chris or somebody can narrate and actually show the
Yeah,
process of
absolutely.
it being put together.
Yeah,
I wouldn't even
there's
mind.
kind of you can actually kind of hack together your own thing, I think, from DVRs, depending on how technically adept you are. So I think some of the old dish transceivers, you can use that satellite dish and that SDR system in there. And I think, I'm not sure if it works on the same bands. I actually haven't done enough research into that, but the cards are cheap enough anyway.
I'd be really interested to see what the speed is like. That's kind of like, for me, I'm going to have to bootstrap, my own node. I mean, I've got a copy of the blockchain on my work computer, and I would presumably, if I duplicated that and actually set up a dedicated workstation, I'm not going to be able to download from from the Coinbase, from the Genesis block, am I? Like, that's just I'm going to be there forever.
Yeah, for right now, pretty much what the feed is it's just a live feed of the current blocks, and I believe right now there is a slight lagging delay cycle that rebroadcasts old blocks in case you lose connection or miss a little bit. But that's just for right now, because essentially I believe the downlink rate is 60 to 120 something kilobits a second, and with the max case with SegWit 2.3 megabyte blocks, I think that would push about 30 kilobits a second of the potential feed in order to get it in a safe enough time that you're not going to have blocks stacking up faster than you can get. Really, one of the more interesting things I wanted to talk about yesterday, but we kind of just glossed over it, is this is right now just a free live feed of the main Bitcoin blockchain. This will stay free forever. Anybody can access this, but obviously, as I just said, at the max it's only 30 kilobits a second out of a potential 120 something being used to broadcast that chain. So Blockstream could actually do a lot of interesting things with the rest of this downlink capability. For instance, Liquid, which I believe is rolling out next year, it's in beta right now, they could have a subscription-based broadcast that businesses could pay for to receive the sidechain updates through this link. Other developers could essentially use this in like a pay for data plan with the Lightning Network and actually send other information that people are paying for. Businesses could use like the same kind of micropayments mechanisms to actually pay for more of the downlink capacity and actually get things faster. So aside from just the basic like free access to the main chain that will stay free and open, there's actually a lot of interesting things you can do with other services and ways that Blockstream could actually monetize this while still offering the feed to the main chain for free to everybody.
But so you're saying that at what point do they stop relaying blocks? So if we're a block for 480,000, they're going to broadcast blocks as they come in, but are they going to continue broadcasting blocks from previously? And if so, what's the cutoff point? How many, is it like 10 blocks wide, or what's the bandwidth?
I'm not sure about the exact block length right now. From what I've learned talking to people, it's not that big right now. It's just kind of a minimal, like if you lose connection, maybe like a day's worth of blocks are kind of cycling at like 3 different alternations so that you would have chances to catch things that you missed. But ideally, I think longer term, the plan is to try to expand that a little more to give a nice safe margin of error. And then I believe in the longer term, they actually have plans to look at the viability of just having a constant cycling of the entire historical chain so that like over a period of a few weeks, it would just reset and you would have the entire chain broadcasting and the potential to bootstrap over a longer time frame off of a feed like this.
Yeah, great. Anyone else? Stephen, you're sitting there kind of ominously. You're just here to spy on us.
A little bit, yeah. I hear the blockchain, the satellite arguments. I think that there's some good things there, some revolutionary things, to be able to relay the blocks, right? I'm not without fear though with it. I think Gavin mentioned yesterday, right? Blockstream satellite thingy is highly centralized. I'm okay with that. You can start your own satellite thing if you like, and that's true. Yeah, you can start these, and hopefully we'll see more people start them. You know, a private investor start it, so that way he can guarantee you know, if Bitcoin is worth enough, I want to have a way that I can always use it, right? And if I could afford my own satellite, if they become cheap enough that you know, they're accessible, then why not be utilized? But
that's a serious risk, right? I mean, like, if it's super centralized and we get a lot of momentum behind a network like that, right? What if the bulk of the weight of financial transactions happen on that network? You know, like, what are the economic incentives there involved in something like that, right? Like, how does that change the incentives in Bitcoin naturally?
Well, I think that's an interesting kind of angle to bring up, and I think that gets into kind of the subtle nature of what exactly the peer-to-peer network is. Because I mean, in the most basic sense, it's just the network connections between nodes. But if you really want to break down the functionality of what it does, I mean, you can look at the relay network as how you get your blocks so that your node can stay at the tip of the chain and be assured they're validating everything. But it's also just a way to get your transactions to the miners. And so depending on like which way you're looking at this, like you might want something totally different out of the network. But being a peer-to-peer network, being ad hoc, where you don't really have any total control over the topology of the network, it's going to be kind of messy trying to optimize both of those things, because you're going to eventually, in my opinion, need to see kind of more specialization to suit each need. And I think what this does, it's a very nice starting point for that, because now the biggest cost in terms of moving data around on the network is the actual block data and all of the unrelayed transactions. Well, or I mean unconfirmed transactions. I'm sorry. So now we have like this downlink that is free for anybody receiving it to get all of that block data, and I believe some of the unconfirmed transactions, and eventually a good enough chunk of that to be relatively certain of what general group of transactions is likely going to be in the next block. And so what this does is, like I said yesterday, I believe, you're getting this from a centralized feed from Blockstream, but when you get that complete block data, all you need to do is get a header from somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly.
To actually verify the integrity of it. And so like this kind of is a nice initial step towards trying to specialize different aspects of the network towards getting the data to you for validation, and like allowing users to have kind of more streamlined ways to get their transaction directly to the miner. Because when you're transacting, you don't really care about everybody else getting it. You want it to get to that miner so that it gets into a block.
Yeah. This is not two-way though, is it? You can't transmit from the satellite to the satellite from your station, can you? From the dish?
No, not now. Although I've seen some people talking about potentially using GPS as a way to do that, but I'm not really sure about the legality of using those frequencies and networks.
Wait. What about AM radio? What about that old trick? Because like a little while ago, I asked, why can't we get Bitcoin into North Korea, right? Like if you can get, no, I'm totally serious, man. Like right now, DVD players and electronics and memory sticks and, you know, 8 VHS cassette tapes are smuggled into North Korea, into the general population. And it's something like for a long time, it's like a pet love of mine. I've never even been to Korea before, but I still love watching videos about it, because it's just, I don't know, it just, I find it very, the story, the narrative quite captivating. So like up until recently, a lot of people in South Korea, the protesters, were sending up weather balloons and letting them flow into the North Korean territory. And people have tried this. And nowadays, the police in South Korea try to stop that because they don't want to raise tensions. And this is kind of something that's kind of been in the news recently. And what I always sort of dreamed of, that someone would build something that, or maybe we can, that can allow for AM radio frequency to get in and out over the water, because you can't stop that, right? You can't jam it. It bounces off the atmosphere and it comes down. Is there enough bandwidth to allow for a basic, you know, TX message to be broadcast that way? Come on, Acnix, you must know the answer.
I think we can sky skip already, using bands that are available right now. So potentially there's already the ability to do this. We can skip right over using the ionosphere and stuff right now. So we can get these mesh networks set up and working, absolutely.
I mean, we don't have to pick North Korea, but we could pick a country. I mean, I think right now those satellites don't even cover East Asia, so I don't even think it's an option to get the satellite link and everything like that. But cyberpunks, like cypherpunks. I'm sorry. Like I want to go back to that. Like I want to go back to that hacker mentality of just picking something up and building it. And right now, I feel like everyone's trying to raise money, and they're not really thinking about why. That is like, we've got to grow. This thing is taking off, and it's a bandwagon. We've got to get on the gravy train. And it reminds me of that Pink Floyd song, tell you the name of the Game Boy. They call it Riding the Gravy Train. And it's all about when talented, gifted people meet a salesperson, and that frustration that they feel that the salesperson is only really interested in the superficiality of it, but the artist is interested in the raw integrity of the work that they're trying to do and the vision that they try to have. So instead of trying to like just raise money for these ICOs, I'm thinking like, what about just building things and shipping it and delivering it and saying, look, I tried this and it worked. And maybe the first step is to get this satellite working. But if anybody watching or anyone on the Mumble knows how to build these kind of AM radio frequency or anything off like the ionosphere, I think that's fascinating to me. I really want to see that happen.
Well, I plan on reaching out to this whole community of ham operators I happen to know.
Right.
They shoot skip all the time. That's what it's called. It's shooting skip. Like you bounce it and like you're getting to the other country. Like it works, It's amazing stuff. So I think the satellite launch is like the first kind of foray back into this stuff. And we need this. Like this is awesome. And we're gonna have like 3 more of these, 4 more of these. Who knows how many more we're gonna get up there. And we're going to get better and better coverage. And then the next part is meshing that all together and getting sat uplinks and downlinks, right? Right,
exactly. And I think like a layered approach would be best. Like if you do have the satellite dish and you can like download blocks, and then you've got like the AM frequency in order to broadcast it, you really only need a receiving node to be able to help propagate that onto the network. Yes, you would, because you're obviously someone needs to have an internet connection receiving that TX data and then broadcasting it from the AM frequency. So you need a receiver. You need someone on the other end that's going to pick up that and then broadcast it for you. And maybe some of the viewers that are quite new to the cryptocurrency space don't understand this principle, that when you transact in a cryptocurrency that's based on Bitcoin's code base, you're using something called public-private key cryptography, which means that you can retain a private key, but without ever exposing that to the rest of the world. You can do things called signing. Actually, the fun fact about cryptocurrency is there's actually no encryption in it. It's just basically you're taking a public-private key pair and you're just signing something. And what that means is that you can just keep that private key to yourself. It never has to touch an internet connection whatsoever. You can sign a transaction that proves that you've received some coins on a certain date, and you can give that signed transaction to anyone, and they can't steal your funds. All they can do is publish it or not publish it. They can either broadcast it onto the blockchain or they can't, but they can't tamper with it in any way. And that gives you a lot of freedom. That means that even people without internet connections can still sign transactions, but give them to somebody else in a trustless way and have those people broadcast it on their behalf. And there's really nothing that broadcaster can do to interfere with your message or censor it in any way. And I find that very exciting. So guys, we've been on like 25 minutes. What are our closing thoughts? Is Shinobi back with us?
Yep, that is infamous VPN trouble. Anybody out there, get a service provider. Anybody besides NordVPN. Literally anybody.
but not
oh,
one.
Wow, call them out.
Not one run by the CIA though. Not one that's like a honeypot, and it's just like basically VPNs is an ISP. It's just you're just having to trust this ISP over here rather than your local one.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't understand.
What happened to Tor? Everyone giving up on Tor? It's everyone.
Well,
The
it's
voice
not that everyone gave up
communication
on it. I
kind
just
of.
think, yeah, I think that it's now considered kind of old tech, and also because the whole Jacob Applebaum thing, and he left. I don't know. I don't hear as much about Tor anymore. I remember when they were trying to do that big push for the exit nodes and trying to get everyone running them. Haven't heard too much about that recently. So I think, you know, a combination of them having like internal kind of, you know, problems, and plus I think it's largely viewed now as like you know, legacy technology, and there are ways that the surveillance state can get inside of it by just running a lot of exit nodes themselves and just listening for that data, and they can eventually over time build a temporal graph and try to extract identifiable information of users. We remember that Silk Road was taken down, and that was on Tor, right? Like they were able to locate those servers. So it's not as if, you know, with enough will, that the state can't penetrate that. So
Yeah,
guys,
I
yeah,
think anybody that's sane should be questioning why one of the most well-connected nodes on the network is in Langley, Virginia.
exactly. Let me quickly take a look at the troll box. I was in there a little bit just now, chatting to everyone. Let's see what's been saying. So, Mr. Hoddle, we've had TX via radio waves in the past, so yeah, it would be good to do that. And I love above as below says BTC save DPRK hashtag. Dude, that's a great hashtag, man. That's a good one. Let me see if I can just get this get on the screen for you guys so you can actually see it. But here we go. And so I love this hashtag. I think we could get this trending with enough participation from everyone at home. And yeah, okay. So apparently the satellites do support two-way. So maybe that's something we can do. But once you get the equipment, Shinobi, you can tell us.
Yeah,
And,
I think that the two-way issue, it's mostly that one, obviously, if you have everybody broadcasting at the satellite, it's only one receiving point, so that's going to be a lot of stuff to sift through. And then also, like I was saying yesterday, with the difference between the CubeSat versus the communication satellite, like there's that inverse relationship when you're dealing with radio waves. If you put more power into the transmission source, you need a smaller dish to receive it, and vice versa. So whoever's transmitting it is really going to need a lot of energy if they want to get that signal moving a distance.
Can I ask a question real quick? Can this lead to less fungibility, say, in that because if these transactions could be received and broadcast from everywhere, then it wipes out that choke point. So the way to create the next choke point then is having, you know, centralized places that where the coins have to be, you know, if the coins that move through them are approved, right? I see this.
wait, how do you mean? Like the choke point is the fact that it's just run by one company at the moment, and so when you're broadcasting, they have to either choose your transaction or not.
Essentially, yeah. I mean, you know, we already see these net neutrality laws coming in, right? Could we somehow take that to the next level, because we're talking about money transmission here, right? And could a law be made to restrict essentially the transmission mechanism?
Yeah, but Shinobi's got an answer to this, right?
Yes.
See, that feeds back into kind of a little bit about what I was touching on earlier with like looking at what you're trying to get out of the network, like the shit to validate everything or to relay your transaction. And as far as like trying to broadcast transactions directly to the satellite, that's something I would really recommend like people don't like dive right into trying, because like the reason that this is such a huge privacy boon is that as a node receiving things, you're passively receiving that signal from the feed. So everybody can see where it's coming from, but nobody sees like who's listening. Whereas if you were trying to broadcast a transaction or everybody was like that, it would be the exact, you know, the same thing in reverse. Like everybody could see where those transactions were coming from and have no idea who's listening. So if you had everybody trying to independently broadcast their own transactions, that would be geographically tieable to you. So I think as far as getting things up to the sat link, it would be much better to try to have like kind of more centralized, but in a more distributed way, where those transmission points aren't just for one person. They're broadcasting things for lots of people so that you have that one source that everybody's using, and it's not as easily tieable to an individual.
Right. In order to be anonymous, you need other people, right? You can't be anonymous on your own. And so, exactly. Yeah. So that will come with time. And people in the chat, just going to wrap up here, have said, you know, radio, SMS, fax, telegraph. Like, yeah, I would love to send a Bitcoin transaction by fax. That would be fun. That would be quite a lot of fun. I guess you would just do a QR code, right? Okay, guys.
Really a lot of ways. Like you could get a transaction anywhere you want in as inventive a way as you can think to move data.
Great. Well, listen, everyone, it's been 30 minutes. I guess we'll wrap it up here, but you can expect more things. We're still working on the technology side and in the background. And I just want to thank my guests today. And we had Shinobi, we had Agnes, had Stephen, you had our inline producer, Mr. Hoddle, who's really the brains behind this, you know. And I guess we'll see you guys tomorrow. If you like what you see here, you can subscribe and you can like. We're not taking donations right now, but I guess we will do in the future. But really, we're just grateful for all the views we got yesterday. We got 700 views. It was like our first proper video. 800 now, I'm being told by my producer, Shani. So 800 views, and we only had like 70 subscribers. So that's incredible. I have no idea. You know, that the magic of the internet, and we got you. So we really appreciate it. And we also really appreciate the guys that watch this all the way through to the end. We know who you are because you often come to us with topics that we were discussing at the end of the video. So really, you're the heroes, you are the resistance, and I thank you. I'm Chris Ellis, and this has been Block Digest. I'll see you tomorrow.